All right, so it's just before 7:05, just turned 7:05 actually. So I think we're going to get started. Once again, thank you all for showing up. It's been a long weekend, and we thank you again for sticking through this whole process and everything. Just to start off with a little bit of a recap, we started off with our opening speaker on Saturday morning with Hans-Jürgen Wieberg, who gave us a really insightful background into his time founding Be My Eyes. And then from there, we had a great series of speaker workshops and like talks and everything like that from some amazing speakers with incredible backgrounds and everything like that. And then for the past 12 or so hours, I think a lot of you have been working very hard on your design challenges, and we will be announcing the awards and prizes for that very soon in this closing ceremony. But before we do that, we do have a closing guest speaker, and I will let Anita introduce her.
Yeah, I hope you guys have had a good weekend. We've really enjoyed having you guys with us. As our closing keynote, we have Lava Sunder. Okay, she's having some technical issues, but that's okay. She is the general manager of Cul-De-Sac, the first car-free community built from scratch in the US. Prior to this, she was at McKinsey, where she led digital transformations of companies in traditional industries. She was actually also a Duke graduate, class of 2016. And here she studied statistics and computer science, also a former DSG president, for everyone that knows what DSG is. So it is my pleasure to welcome Lava. I don't know if she will be able to unmute, but.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, I think you're good now.
Okay, good. Sorry, I'm having, I think I just chatted this to you, Anita, but I'm having a bit of a hellish day, no thanks to cars. So I went on a road trip with my friend and our car broke down. So now we're running very late and I was not able to grab my computer. So I'm doing this closing keynote on my phone. But I think, Anita, if you tag team with me and share some of the links I wanted to share, I think we'll be good to go. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool. Hi everyone. Nice to meet folks. I hope I hope the Hack weekend has been going well, and I'm excited to share a little bit more about my journey in Cul-De-Sac with you today. Like Anita said, I was a Duke grad of 2016, and I studied CS and statistics, and I now work for our real estate developer, and we're building car-free communities from scratch. Starting with our first community in Tempe, Arizona. It's called Cul-De-Sac Tempe. It's 1,000 neighborhood, 17-acre community built completely from scratch. And so what I thought I would do today is walk folks through the neighborhood design and talk a little bit about how we thought about the design of Cul-De-Sac Tempe, down to the details of the placements of the courtyards, and then kind of all the way up to the details of the overall site plan. For some context, Culdesac Tempe just won sort of the nation's biggest home building award, the National Association of Home Builders Platinum Award for Innovation. And so what I'm excited about, and one of the reasons I love Culdesac, is design, innovating everything from the built environment to something like the resident application that we'll give folks who move in. So if that sounds good, I will share a screen in the chat, and folks can open it on their own screen. Anita, I wonder if you want to open that and share your screen, and I can kind of get started.
Yes, give me 1 second. Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Oh, this is going to be great, Anita. We're going to be very good tag teams right now.
Okay.
So if everyone can see the screen, what we're looking at is the site plan of Culdesac Tempe. So when you think about design, I'm sure you guys have thought about this all weekend and probably for a lot longer. There's a lot of different things that you think about with design. But one thing with digital design is how quickly you can iterate. So I think we've all seen of like, you know, the classic feeling of seeing an updated application and new UI. And these are things from a digital perspective that can change quickly. The difference with something like the built environment, and particularly something that's as regulated as housing, is that you can't change it quickly in a lot of ways. So we actually submitted the first Culdesac Tempe site plan over a year and a half ago to get zoning with the city of Tempe. So if you think about design, like something like an iOS app, you can kind of ship something in a week. This community is built and designed to last for 30, 40, 50 years. So the design of the community is really, it's a much bigger undertaking and a little bit slower actually. So what we're looking at here is the Cul-De-Sac Tempe site plan. Like I said, it's 17 acres, and it's the first development in the US that's been built since the advent of the car that has 0 residential parking at a neighborhood scale. So you see the small parking lot on the left-hand side, it's that gray lot. It has 150 spaces, and that's only for visitors and for guests. The rest of the site is completely car-free, so no vehicles can go on the site, and residents can't own vehicles as a provision of their lease. One of the other very interesting parts about the site design is how much outdoor space there is. So if you see the green space on the map and then the thick white kind of walkways, those are all outdoor space, and actually over 55% of the site is outdoor space compared to most apartment complexes in the US. Only 20 to sometimes 30% of the site is open space. And the reason we're able to do that is because so much land is unlocked without having, private parking. So another kind of cool thing about the site plan is that it's twice the density of San Francisco, but it has 3 times as much open space. And this is because we're able to get rid of residential parking. One of the ways we're able to do that is because of the on-site retail. So you see that orange on the northwest. Part of the design is making sure that the retail is the first thing that you see when you get to the site. And that includes a grocery store, a restaurant, a co-working space, and a coffee shop. So the first thing that we did when we designed the community was talk to car-free folks that live in Arizona and ask them, what kind of amenities do you want to live in? And that influenced the fundamental design of the community because we added a lot of courtyards, but we also added a grocery store, which was the #1 amenity that folks said they wanted when they live in a community like this. Before I move on to the next part of the tour, I wonder if folks have any questions, or maybe you can even chime in the chat. Okay, I will move on. All right, I just shared a second link. Thank you. Oh, that's perfect. So now you can kind of see, basically, I'm going to take you guys through a tour of the community. And Anita, if you click and kind of, you can pane. Yeah, exactly. So we can start right here. I just see a question from Terry, and that's actually great because that's kind of what this slide goes over. So the way that residents get around is multimodal transportation. So the first is Culdesac Tempe is built on a light rail. So the design of the community was also influenced by the selection of the land. And actually, there'll be a dedicated pedestrian crosswalk from the site to the light rail that you can see right there. And we did that to reduce the friction as much as possible to ride the light rail for residents. You also see the protected bike lane. So residents will get around via bike. We'll also be integrated with rideshare companies and scooter share companies. And there's also on-site car share in the parking lot that you see towards the left. If you keep rotating the screen, you'll see what the front of the community looks like. And the first thing that you see is a restaurant. And so what we're really excited about is that we're partnering with a local restaurateur. They're actually a husband and wife team born and raised in Chihuahua, Mexico, who immigrated to Arizona. And so they're opening up the restaurant at Culdesac. So we're very excited about it. And sort of in partnership with us and our small business grant, we're able to kind of make that happen. And then if you keep kind of rotating a little bit more, you'll see the entrance to the site. And you see a little bit of the open space that I'm talking about that's very different from a typical community that, like I said, needs to have parking and cars. Any other questions? Awesome. So if we jump to the Plaza, which is kind of the next slide, this is really like the retail center of the site. So that building with the blue awning is the grocery store. And something kind of interesting about the design of the grocery store is, you know, like I said, the first decision that we made in terms of the site design is, well, what building should be on the site? So, you know, we started and said, we need a grocery store. And then the decision comes, well, what should that building look like? Should it be mixed use or should it be a standalone grocery store? And so we decided to make the building mixed use, which means that there's 2 floors of residential on top, because we wanted to make it feel like you were living in an urban environment. You know, a type of lifestyle that folks in Tempe don't typically get to have access to. The next thing kind of with the design of the grocery store is like down to the detail of what does the floor plan look like. And we've worked a lot with a number of boutique, you know, grocery store designers to figure out what's the best possible floor plan for a grocery store that's going to be frequented by people multiple times a week. So not like, you know, a 20, 30,000 square foot Costco, but actually a 5,000 square foot small neighborhood market, almost like a bodega in New York. So it's very interesting to see for design, like how many different elements, you know, we've kind of involved. And now we're kind of talking about all the way down to the brand and how can we make the interiors and the FF&E, which is sort of furniture, fixtures, and elevations, look brand aligned with Cul-De-Sac. So one of the questions was a great question from Anna. Do you envision only residents using the restaurant, grocery store, and retail stores? No, actually, that's a really good question. The vision is for Culdesac Tempe to really be a destination for the broader metro area. We've had a lot of success with coverage over the community because folks are really excited about it. So I'll share links in the chat after, but you know, we've been covered in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and it's very much intended to be a destination. So that parking that I mentioned, the 150 spots, that's for folks to visit the community, and all of the retail is open and should be seen as amenity to the broader community. In fact, we're building a grocery store right now in a community that's technically considered a food desert. So yeah, Anna, to your question, it's very much open to the community. If you pan a little bit to the left, yeah, exactly. You'll see my favorite building on the site, and this is the coffee and co-working building. So the design of this building is actually really interesting. Those terracotta breeze blocks, which is kind of what you see up there, those are influenced by traditional Middle Eastern architecture. And the purpose of them has typically been for cross ventilation and cooling. So it's interesting to see, you know, how we can kind of incorporate different architectural styles to help with cooling as well. And then if you kind of keep rotating, one quick thing is just looking at the front of the community, and you're able to see, you know, how close some of this community is to the light rail. Okay, so Joanna has a question, so I'm going to read it. I have a question regarding accessibility of this sort of community, specifically the topic of people with varying wages. Would residents living in this area need to be making a certain amount, or how would communities like this be able to accommodate people of all financial situations? Thank you. Yeah, this is a great question. So, you know, Culdesac as a company, we're a real estate developer and a property manager. So we're developing this community like a typical multifamily development or a fair housing community. And so we don't discriminate obviously on basis of sex or class or race. When it comes to financial accessibility, actually, the biggest thing that we think about is most walkable, dense neighborhoods in the US are economically prohibitive for most Americans to live in. And so the reason is because there's so few walkable neighborhoods. There's something like 60% of millennials want to live in a walkable neighborhood, but only 8% do. And so as a result, the few walkable neighborhoods that exist are priced so prohibitively that most Americans are forced to sort of live in these more car-dependent communities. And so, you know, Cul-De-Sac Tempe is built as, you know, the same kind of rents as average new buildings in the Phoenix metro area, and sort of taking into consideration, the fact that we're in a way subsidizing a lot of the trips you would need to make with a car by having an on-site grocery store. The cost of transportation is also massively reduced. The average American spends $9,000 a year on a car. So in terms of total cost of living, we're excited to be able to offer something like this walkable neighborhood to more than just 8% of Americans. Cool. Anita, and I think we can go to the next slide, or the next screen, which is my favorite screen, and it is the main promenade. So basically, this is like the bridge between the commercial and retail area of the site and the residential. So when we actually just pausing right here, this is a really great example of design when it comes to this community, and it's actually the width of this main promenade. So if you can see it, it looks quite wide in this image, and that's actually because it is intentionally wide. It's 26 feet wide, and it is a fire lane. And the reason that is there's no internal roads at Culdesac Tempe for cars. But of course, like any other neighborhood in the US, we have local fire code to abide to. And so we actually co-collaborated with the city of Tempe to figure out how exactly we could get fire access through the community. So all of the thick white roads that you saw on the map in the beginning, those are actually all fire lanes. And so we're really excited that we can show that communities like this are possible to be built right now. There's a famous thing going around on Twitter. The most photographed city, or rather the most photographed street in the US is actually not allowed to be built anymore. So it's a very dense human scale alley in Boston. It has like brick on either side, and it's actually not allowed to be built. So we're excited to show that this kind of human scale density can be built and sort of is enabled by modern transportation. So if you kind of keep rotating, you'll see that we're looking at the commercial area that we just came from, and then behind us is the residential. So our architects call this style of housing Desert Mykonos, and it's inspired by a bunch of different things, by Europe, and also a bit by the Arizona environment as well. And a cool thing about the architecture and the architect is it's all missing middle architecture. And so what this is stuff like duplexes, garden style apartments, townhomes, and really residential product that isn't typically built in the US anymore. The US builds a lot of single family detached homes. So, think the traditional suburbs, and also builds a lot of high multifamily towers, but doesn't build a lot of this missing middle architecture, which tends to be more affordable and also just better for the environment. So we're excited to build that. And like I said, we're twice the density of the city of San Francisco, but still only have 3-story buildings throughout the site. We'll also have a food truck park on site, which you're seeing there. Okay, so I see a thing. Can you talk a little bit about handicap accessibility, especially if a person is unable to walk? Yeah, sure. So the nature of the site, because everything is so human scale and there's so few tall buildings, actually almost all of the units, or a large portion of the units at Cul-de-sac, are able to be made accessible because they can be accessed on the ground floor. And the entire site that you're seeing is of course accessible. And that's because it's important to us to make sure that the site is not just for bikers and walkers, but also for folks that are traveling with other means. So most of the first floor units at the site, like I said, can be made accessible. And this is very different than, a typical multifamily tower, if you think, where it's a very different feel. We're excited to be able to give a feeling of, actually entering your front door, but also at the kind of level of affordability of an apartment complex, which has only been able to be enabled because there's not, a massive parking garage. And then because we have to build a big parking garage, a tall building. And actually that point is even better made in the next slide, Anita, which is the core residential product. And so this is the residential courtyard. this is really where our residents will gather. And you can see those first floor units, which, like I said, is around, I think it's around half of the units or a third of the units on site are all accessible. The other units are accessed by those stairs, and we want these courtyards to be the outdoor living rooms of Cul-De-Sac Tempe, which we're very excited about. All of the courtyards are amenitized with different things. So we have barbecue pits, fire pits, hammocks, and these courtyards are also an example of how we were collaborating with future residents on design. So Cul-De-Sac Tempe has a wait list of folks looking to move in, and these folks come from all around the US. And we're actually able to do collaboration sessions with them and ask them what amenities they like in the courtyard. On one collaboration session with the landscape architect, we asked folks, do you want barbecue pits or do you want something like hammocks? And one of the key takeaways from this design session with future customers was that some residents want very social courtyards, but other residents want to live on courtyards that are a little bit less social. So you think about like a Duke quad, for instance, and there are sort of like quads where, the intention is for folks to hang around. And there are quads where the intention is more for folks to kind of do some quiet reading. We similarly wanted to amenitize that. And that was a great takeaway from the session. And so you can see in the corner, there's sort of, different amenities in different courtyards, which will happen throughout the site. If you rotate throughout the picture, another thing that you'll see is ample bike parking. So we have, as many bike parking spots as we have people, which sounds like it's not that big of a deal, but actually the apartment complex next door has 0 bike parking spots. And so it's very interesting to see how the design can also lend itself to, encouraging behavior like biking or discouraging it on the other side. The last thing to mention here is we have a program at Cul-de-sac called the Extend Your Home on Demand program. And so this program allows you to book a guest suite or a podcast studio or an office space at any point in time on the Cul-de-sac resident app. And so that's basically something, you can't see it explicitly here, but for instance, this blue building could be, a building that you can kind of rent on the app if your parents are in town and you want to house them. Any questions about the residential courtyard? Cool. All right, so the last thing I wanted to show folks is the pool in the park. So it's very rare. In fact, I was talking to a real estate professional the other day. I always say in this slide, it's very rare to see a private development with a half-acre public park. And she made the funny comment, well, it's not rare, I've literally never seen it. And so part of that reason is because real estate development is obviously an expensive business. And so when you have to build parking garages, and these are things that can cost, $15 million, the parking garage for Cul-De-Sac Tempe would cost an order of magnitude of $15 million. You actually just don't have the space or the budget to build things like public amenities. And so we're excited to include this public park, and if you kind of pan to the right, and a dog park as a core part of, the Cul-De-Sac Tempe site plan. So this will be very much open to the public. We'll have events here. And then if you keep rotating, we'll have a pool as well, because you can't build a community in Arizona without including a pool. Here's a great question. So Joanna asked, how will things such as security work / be managed with these communities? Yeah, for the most part, the same as a typical multifamily development. So, we'll have occasional on-site security and be patrolled, at later hours. One of the things to note is that the community is open to the public, but the residential blocks are gated. So if you think about it, we want folks to walk through the community and can walk end to end, can walk through the park, can obviously go to the retail. But if you wanted to enter the core residential block, they're gated with fob access, almost similar to like a college style campus. So at Duke, for instance, obviously the community is open to the public and you can walk through a lot of the residential product. But if you wanted to walk inside the dorms or like, you know, inside Cohen, you'd have to have your Duke ID. So it's very similar to that, except with the residential blocks being the equivalent there. Does that answer your question, Joanna? Awesome. So this is kind of the tour, and I hate to say again that I apologize for having such a hell day, but once again, this is why cars are bad. We need to, you know, shift towards car-free communities. I'd love to answer any questions that folks have through the chat or not through the chat, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I sort of oversee this community, so I know, you know, almost every detail. So I'm happy to answer like the very detailed questions. I've also been at Cul-De-Sac since the early days. I was the fourth employee, and so I'm also happy to talk about joining an early stage company, you know, transitioning from consulting, any of that.
How did you leave, like, transition from consulting to designing something like Cul-De-Sac or being involved in the design of Cul-De-Sac?
Yeah, and sorry, I missed the verb. How did you what? What was the verb?
Transition.
Transition. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So I think I left McKinsey because I wanted to, I was sort of discovering from myself that I, you know, just that when working just really was throwing my all into whatever I was doing, but I was not feeling, I was feeling the sort of distance between my work and the impact, which is a common thing that consultants talk about. And so I really wanted to feel like I was very, very tied to the impact and like the actual work. And so I kind of thought about if I wanted to be at a big company like Google, and I sort of eventually like kept bopping my way down to earlier and earlier stage companies, and then found Cul-De-Sac through a friend. In terms of the transition itself, I mean, I think I actually think ironically, I thought that a lot of the skills would not be transferable, sort of the direct skills. Of course, the like implicit kind of professional potty training is always transferable. But what I found is that at an early stage company, a lot of the thing that people want, the two things that are needed are sometimes in opposition. And so the things is like, one is being scrappy. And so being very, having a very strong bias to action. But then the other is being structured and having some type of, call it higher level view at what work needs to get done. And so I feel like I've focused a lot on being scrappy and wanting to learn and kind of like relearn those skills that I think a lot of us kind of learn in college. But I actually, you know, in the transition found that the structure is also important and is something that I could have started incorporating into my work earlier on versus like feeling the need to over-index on the kind of traditional conception of what it means to work at an early stage company. Yes, this is a great question in the chat, so I'll read it. I'm not sure if this has been addressed already, but what is your vision for the scope of Cul-De-Sac? If this is successful, would you like it to be in a few places or more of a living culture shift in America? So that's a really fantastic question. The vision of Cul-De-Sac is to build the first car-free city in the US. So Culdesac Tempe is 1,000 people. Our next projects are going to be 5,000 to 10,000 people. But the vision really of the company is to build the first car-free city. And so that, you know, in and of itself, I think is a culture shift. What I would say is we're not trying to own this culture shift and would love it to happen in cities and places where we're not building. And so an example of this is if you live car free anywhere in the world, I mean, we've done this everywhere. We'll send you a sticker for, commemorating how many years you've lived car free. And that's because we want folks to get around and feel empowered to have the option to live without a private car everywhere. And so in terms of the vision, the company's vision is obviously to build a car-free city or is objectively to build a car-free city, but is also to see this culture shift happening everywhere. And I think COVID and the slow streets and open streets movement that happened as a result of COVID was a really great example of how powerful a culture shift can be. So you saw over 100 cities in the US dedicate traditional roads or parking to people. So, parking spots became outdoor eateries. Some streets were closed to outside traffic and people loved it. And we would love to see that culture shift sustained. And it's a shame that it's taken a pandemic to make cities safer for people. But that's definitely also, I would say, something we would love to see in the world as well.
Any other questions? Well, if there are no other questions, then I think we can probably wrap it up. But again, thank you so much, Lava, for sharing your background experience, as well as giving us an insight into Cul-De-Sac Tempe and how hopefully that will create a culture change in the US. And yeah, we're very excited to see how it takes off in the coming years.
Thank you for having me, and I apologize again for not being able to show my face and share my screen. And huge thanks to Anita for quarterbacking that presentation. That almost worked better than had I been doing it myself. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to reach out, Lava has shared her email in the chat, so feel free. Okay, so give me a second. Let me just share my screen again. All right, so moving on, we are going to announce the winners of the various prizes that we have. So just a summary of what we do have. For each of the nonprofits that we have partnered with, we will be awarding a first place and a second place prize. So the first place prize is a $400 donation to the nonprofit that you chose under the names of your team members. So that'll be able to help you. Your project will basically be able to help give to a good cause by donating to a nonprofit. And so there will be 6 of those. And then on the other side of the aisle, we have our sponsor prizes. So again, huge thank you to Huawei for sponsoring this event. And if you haven't already checked it out, one of the VPs at Huawei actually gave a talk yesterday, and it's on our YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. But for the Huawei Innovation Award, we have a first, second, and third place prize worth $500, $300, and $200. So I think with that, we can start with the first nonprofit, Vets to Vets.
Yeah, so we have some really awesome projects for Vets to Vets. There are some really cool things that are going on, and I know Dr. Terry really appreciates all the work that has been put into the projects. So we want to share first, the second place is Vets to Vets United Making Connections. So the team with Kat, Angela, and Michelle, congratulations. And then our first place is rebranding Vets to Vets United. So the team with Ritvi, Alexandra, and Tina. So congratulations to you guys. I know Dr. Terry's here. I don't know if she would want to say a couple of words, but congratulations to these teams. You guys did amazing jobs on your projects. And we really hope you enjoyed creating them.
I am so sorry. I've been here. I had my camera covered, so I was like, where am I? Anyway, you know I'm technology challenged. I would just like to thank everyone, first of all, for the hard work that you all have put into the projects that you created. Wonderful, beautiful ideas that are going to help us. I mean, we can take parts of everyone's project and really help us to make a website that is much user friendly, that reaches out to people that we haven't been able to reach out before. That you've used ideas that creative ideas that we can incorporate into our site. And I'm just so thankful to have this opportunity. And I just want to thank all of you. And for the first and second place winners, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody did such a fantastic job, though. So I just want to say thank you again for helping us, for caring about us, our mission, for caring about our veterans and the rescue dogs that we partner them with. And if anybody, wants to continue to help us in the future, then we definitely could use your help. So just reach out to us, and thanks again.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So we'll move on to our next award, which is for Caring House. And for Caring House, we just have a first place award given to Team Noor. So Devin, Garima, Brian, and Gabby, congratulations. And we'll move on.
Yeah. So our last nonprofit is Seeds North Carolina, and we have 2 winners for Seeds. So in second place, we have Chef by Seeds. So again, congratulations to Philbert, Karina, Adeline, and Nathania. And then lastly, for first place, congratulations to Turnip, which is Vikrant, Alice, and Joanna. And so that is, I guess, the conclusion of the HackDuke donation prizes. And so moving on, we have the Huawei Innovation Award. So we have 3 winners, and starting with the third place, congratulations again to Turnip, Vikrant, Alice, and Joanna. And then in second place, we have Rebranding Vets to Vets United, Ritvi, Alexandra, and Tina. Again, congratulations. And then finally, last but definitely not least, in first place for the Huawei Innovation Award is Noor. So congratulations again to Devin, Garima, Brian, and Gabby. So yeah, that is the conclusion of our awards, basically award ceremony and everything like that. We will be reaching out after the event to all of the teams that won to basically give like a big thank you, as well as like talk about next steps. And again, big thank you to everyone who just submitted a project. We know that you all put in a ton of effort, like 12 hours or more into working on this. And we really enjoyed listening to all of your presentations.
Thank you. Will you be posting all the awards on your website? Okay.
Yeah. We'll make sure to update all the dev posts, and then we will also try to post it on our website. We'll probably put it on our design guide as well. We'll send it out, and then we'll also send out an email to all the winners about some next steps or some information.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you you guys for spending your weekend with us. It's been a long weekend, but I hope you guys had some fun, get some sleep, get some rest. Yeah, so thank you to our team, our speakers, our mentors, everyone. So
thank you. God bless you all. Thank you.